In the heart of Europe, a towering wall once loomed, splitting not just a city, but the world. Imagine waking up one day to find your city effectively divided, families torn apart, and a stark, concrete reminder of ideological conflict stretching for miles. This wall was not merely a barrier, it was a symbol of oppression, a testament to the Cold War's fierce grip on human lives. The Berlin Wall, erected in 1961 and standing for nearly 3 decades, played a pivotal role in shaping the landscape of global politics and people's lives. But its fall in 1989 sparked a revolutionary wave, marking a powerful resurgence of hope and unity. Today, you'll uncover the heartbreaking tales and triumphant moments surrounding this historical divide and what led to its eventual collapse. What if I told you that this wall was just the manifestation of deeper socio-political struggles across the globe? Stay with me as we journey through an era filled with tension, intrigue, and ultimately, liberation. You might be wondering, how did this wall come to signify so much more than concrete? What events led ordinary people to embrace the spirit of revolution, and what secrets linger from those turbulent times? By the end of our exploration, you'll possess not just knowledge, but a deeper understanding of what life was like in a city torn apart and how it felt to break free. To understand the Berlin Wall, we must first travel back to the events that caused its creation. After World War II, Germany was divided into 4 occupation zones controlled by the United States, the United Kingdom, France, and the Soviet Union. This partition was intended to be temporary, but tensions flared between the Western Allies and the Soviet Union, foreshadowing the ideological battle to come. As these factions clashed, 2 distinct nations emerged: West Germany, which flourished under capitalist principles, and East Germany, a rogue state ruled by a repressive communist regime. Can you imagine living in a place where the government watched your every move? East Germans experienced a suffocating existence where dissent was met with aggression. The Stasi, the secret police, infiltrated every aspect of life, maintaining a paranoid grip on the populace. By 1960, thousands were fleeing to the West, creating a massive brain drain that endangered the East German state. In response, the government, pressured by the Soviets, instituted a drastic measure. The Berlin Wall was erected overnight on August 13, 1961. Families were separated as they woke up to find streets blocked, barbed wires slashing through their lives. This monumental divide effectively turned Berlin into a battleground of ideologies. Here's something you didn't expect. Within mere hours, more than 600 people were trapped in the wrong part of the city. Imagine witnessing your family members hastily crossing a street, not knowing they'd be forever separated. The wall seemed like an impregnable barrier, but for some, it became a challenge. Jumping the wall was an act of desperate defiance. Over the years, many would attempt the perilous journey, risking life and limb for freedom. What happens when hope confronts desperation? With remarkable accounts of daring escapes, people became determined to find their way to the other side, proving time and again that the human spirit could not be muted but rather amplified by adversity. The stories of those who fought against the wall are as myriad as the bricks that composed it. Let's pause for a moment and reflect on the accounts of those like Peter Fechter, a young man who, in 1962, became one of the wall's first fatalities. Attempting to escape, he was shot by East German guards as he crossed the border. Instead of being taken to safety, he bled out on the wall's edge, crying for help, but no one could reach him, his cries echoing back through time like a haunting specter of lost ambition. What do you think that moment signified for thousands who witnessed it? For the next few decades, the Berlin Wall stood as a chilling reminder of oppression, chaos, and division. The world watched as East and West Berlin became symbols of competing ideologies. Yet even amidst this turmoil, the incessant drive to connect, reunite, and converse persisted. Throughout the 70s and 80s, various movements and protests began to emerge inside East Germany, igniting the flickering flame of resistance. You may not be aware, but the regime underestimated the power of unity and collective yearning for freedom. The peaceful revolution began to take root in the late 1980s, fueled by calls for reform and fueled by the winds of change sweeping across Eastern Europe. Countries like Poland witnessed similar movements, and tensions were rising. Grassroots protests surged, with citizens bravely filling the streets, chanting for change. Meanwhile, the global political climate shifted. With Mikhail Gorbachev at the helm of the Soviet Union, the policies of glasnost, openness, and perestroika, restructuring, created ripples of hope across Eastern Europe. Could these reforms fuel a larger movement that would challenge the very fabric of totalitarian rule? What uncharted territories lay ahead for the people of Berlin? As protests intensified in the late 1980s, so did the realization among East Germans they were not alone. The sheer volume of people marching for freedom, demanding rights, and challenging the status quo became impossible to ignore. In 1989, weeks before the wall's fall, this fervor reached a boiling point. The series of mass demonstrations culminated in what became known as the Monday demonstrations, drawing over 100,000 people to gather for change. When you think of revolutions, do you picture a sea of determined faces chanting for freedom? That's exactly what unfolded, as demonstrators in East Berlin organized and mobilized against the ever-tightening grip of a fearful regime. The spotlight was on the East German government, and as pressure mounted, cracks began to appear within the regime itself. On November 9, 1989, in a moment of confusion that would change the course of history, a government spokesperson announced that East Germans would be allowed to cross the border freely. What followed was a scene that would forever be etched in the annals of time, a moment bursting at the seams with raw emotion. Citizens rushed to the Berlin Wall, pouring into the streets, bringing hammers and chisels to chip away at the structure of their confinement. The event unfolded with a mixture of disbelief and joy as people clawed their way through the walls of oppression. What comes next will leave you speechless. As the jubilant crowds celebrated, an emotional tide swept through the city. Families reunited, tears and laughter mingled with a profound sense of relief. Evocative images of jubilant expressions flooded homes around the world, embodying the very essence of freedom. The fall of the Berlin Wall was not merely an event but a turning point in the narrative of humanity, a beautiful declaration that hope can transcend even the most formidable challenges. In the days that followed, the zone around the wall transformed into an extraordinary space for celebration, reflection, and unadulterated joy. The past experiences etched into the Berlin Wall's concrete were now juxtaposed against the liberating atmosphere of reunification. As people danced atop the remnants of oppression, they embraced a newfound freedom, heartbroken yet resilient, honed by years of struggle and perseverance. The wall's fall was more than bricks tumbling down, it was a powerful shift that reverberated worldwide. What that moment meant extended beyond the borders of Berlin. It resonated in places like Prague, Budapest, and even Moscow, lighting a spark of possibility in regions long languishing under autocracy. But the aftermath of this monumental event raised even more questions. What would reunification mean for the people of Germany? How could a nation so deeply divided begin to heal its wounds? At this juncture, we see that the Berlin Wall's history is intricately woven into the tapestry of global politics and human emotion. It stands as a testament to resilience and a reminder of the cost of freedom. In the second half of this journey, we will delve deeper into the personal stories, the ongoing repercussions of the wall's fall, and the journey toward unified Germany. The shadows of history cast long over the present, and as we continue, you'll hear tales of hope, reconciliation, and the intertwined fates of millions. Stay tuned as we explore what happened after the wall fell, drawing back the curtain on a vibrant, chaotic period of transformation. As the dust settled from the chaotic celebrations of the Berlin Wall's fall, a profound sense of urgency began to seep into the collective consciousness of both East and West Germans. The joyous revelry that had characterized those initial days quickly shifted attention to vital questions surrounding reunification. What would this new Germany look like? How could a nation so deeply scarred by decades of division reconcile its past and look to the future? The reunification process, formalized with the Treaty on the Final Settlement with respect to Germany in 1990, was an intricate dance of emotions and logistics. Both the East and the West had formed distinct identities over the years, economically, socially, and culturally. East Germans often bore the weight of resentment toward what they perceived as Western arrogance, while West Germans grappled with concerns about how integrating a struggling economy and population would affect their own prosperity. To understand the depth of these challenges, let's look at the economic landscape. The East German economy had been reeling under the weight of a centralized, state-controlled model, plagued by inefficiencies and a lack of competition. When the wall fell, it became glaringly evident that the East's economic infrastructure was crumbling. Factories stood dormant, and unemployment rates shot up as hundreds of thousands faced job losses in an economy that was suddenly forced to integrate with one of the world's leading capitalist nations. The transition wasn't only challenging, it was jarring. How does a society shift gears so drastically, so quickly? Tension simmered as debates raged over how the reunification process should unfold. Despite the idealism that accompanied the wall's fall, political leaders debated the most effective methods for implementing reforms. The 2+4 negotiations, involving the two German states and the four Allied powers, the US, the UK, France, and the Soviet Union, ultimately laid the groundwork for a unified Germany. The talks signified an important stepping stone, yet debates remained over everything from monetary reform to citizenship rights for East Germans. Amid the turbulence, the voices of ordinary people became increasingly significant. Citizens from the East organized grassroots movements advocating for their voices to be heard during the unification dialogues. How could a government that had spent decades in isolation understand the hopes and concerns of those on the other side? The push for inclusion led to the rise of various civic organizations, seeking to bridge the cultural divide and ensuring that East Germans were not relegated to the status of mere bystanders in their future. Furthermore, the psychological impact of decades spent under oppressive surveillance deeply affected the mindset of East Germans during this transition. For many, the Stasi's reach had indoctrinated a culture of skepticism and mistrust. Imagine living in a society where voicing dissent could lead to dire repercussions. This reality turned the act of expressing one's needs into a courageous, albeit daunting exercise. How do people rebuild trust in one another when their entire upbringing was steeped in caution? As the two Germanys began to work together, the issue of memory preservation emerged, a struggle to reconcile different recollections of history. In the East, memories of authoritarian suppression often contrasted sharply with the West's narrative of overcoming adversity through the capitalist lens. The reunification debates brought forth stories of resilience but also of trauma that lingered beneath the surface. Museums, documentaries, and discussions began to address this dichotomy while attempting to forge a united narrative that acknowledged both the pain of division and the joy of reunion. Just as East and West began to navigate a shared future, they discovered that the remnants of the Berlin Wall remained, not just as physical structures, but as ongoing symbols of their divided past. Artists and activists transformed sections of the wall into vibrant canvases of expression. Murals depicting themes of freedom, unity, and hope sprouted along the remains of the once ominous divide. These art pieces became pilgrimage sites and global attractions, reminding visitors that the walls we build can also be dismantled through creativity and collaboration. Celebrating the uniqueness of both cultures became vital during this period. Festivals and events highlighting the rich contributions of both East and West gave rise to a new German identity, one not rooted in mere geography but in the shared lived experiences of overcoming division. Germans promoted cultural exchanges, art projects, and educational curriculums integrating both histories, exposing the next generation to a rich tapestry woven from threads of diversity and understanding. Can you envision a future blossoming from such efforts? Despite the initial euphoria of reunification, economic disparities continued to reveal themselves, presenting a long-term challenge for unified Germany. the East struggled in a market-driven economy as many industries could not keep pace with their Western counterparts. Discontent simmered as unemployment territories lingered well over the national average for years, leading to protests and movements that questioned the efficacy of the reunification efforts. The dialogue around nostalgia, a term derived from the nostalgia for East German life, highlighted the struggle many felt, longing for the stability and camaraderie that had characterized life in the GDR, despite its oppressive governance. How do communities rebuild when the yearning for simplicity clashes with the complexities of modernity? Years passed, and while challenges persisted, many Germans began to look toward a future characterized by hope and promise. The European Union started to foster a regional sense of unity that transcended borders, aligning economic and political interests in an effort to promote peace and stability. Germany, positioned at the heart of Europe, took the lead in championing the values of democracy, inclusivity, and shared prosperity. Travel restrictions that had once shattered families were replaced by ease of movement, and students from both sides of the former wall began to mingle and coexist, shaping a new generation happier to embrace their history rather than be shackled by it. Fast forward to the present day, and we witness a Germany that has gone through transformations unimaginable just a few decades ago. But stitching together wounds requires ongoing patience and dialogue. As of 2023, the echoes of the Berlin Wall still ripple through debates on nationalism, identity, and the European project's cohesion. Indeed, coping with the remnants of the wall emphasizes more than historical reflection. It calls attention to the pressing issues of exclusion, migration, and social inequality that persist today. The wall's legacy challenges us to ask essential questions. How do we ensure inclusivity while navigating our diverse identities? What lessons can we draw from history to address our present-day divides? The remembrance of the Berlin Wall prompts us not just to reflect on physical barriers but the emotional, societal, and ideological ones that continue to separate us today. As we close this profound journey through the rise and fall of the Berlin Wall, we are reminded that while bricks may crumble, the values of freedom and unity persist. The stories of triumph and tragedy feed into a contemporary narrative that champions hope above all. The wall became a poignant reminder of the human spirit's resilience. In the unity of adversities, we find a collective strength that transcends politics, paving the way for a brighter future. So let us carry forth the legacy of those who stood before the Berlin Wall. They did not merely desire to tear down concrete, rather, they yearned to break free from the chains that bound them. In their fight for freedom, they carved out a space for hope and possibility. The echoes of their struggle remind us that even the greatest divisions can be overcome, uniting us beneath the shared ambition of a better tomorrow.